I understand you have a pretty good knowledge of this investigation, so what's your immediate reaction to this report?
Well, the report is very big news here in Washington, D.C. It's the front page of the Washington Post. It's making this story big all around the country. You know, there's such fragile support, if support is the right word at all, for the U.S./NATO war in Afghanistan, that something like this can have a very destabilizing effect for the administration's efforts to maintain some semblance of support from the broader public. I think we see now that the United States government is, as it did in Iraq, but perhaps for similar and somewhat different reasons, paying or providing funds for those that they're supposedly at war with, the insurgent forces. And I think the political fallout, both in the left and the right in the United States, is great because there's opposition across the political spectrum to the war in Afghanistan. And as you know, that support internationally is withering as we speak.
But this is a time of war, and as the report says, surely is this not a necessary policy? Almost without fail, if the US doesn't pay up, the convoy gets attacked. It's better to lose money than lives, isn't it?
Well, I couldn't quite hear the whole question, but I think in terms of what's happened is that Afghanistan is a landlocked country. 90% of that country is under the control of the insurgents. There are 140 armed resistance groups, not just the Taliban. Many of them are loosely networked. How does the U.S. get its supplies to its forts, to its military bases? Of course, it has to go through enemy territory. It can't militarily control the situation, so what does it do? It pays them. And as it becomes clear and evident that the United States is in such desperate straits in the war in Afghanistan, even at the moment that the Obama administration is surging more troops, tens of thousands more troops, even under this situation, it becomes clear to the American people, I think, that this is a hopeless cause. And in fact, the war in Afghanistan has been lost, and this is just one more piece of the puzzle, so the political fallout will be very great.
So this is a case of the US taxpayer, in effect, paying the enemy, but what can your coalition do about it? What sort of action do you plan?
Well, I think we'll see, and we'll be announcing, in fact, in the coming weeks, large-scale anti-war protests that will take place in the fall of this year and again in the spring of next year. I think we're seeing that, unlike the past, we have political support across support for the anti-war coalition's activities, the Answer Coalition and others, across the political spectrum, and most notably, the number of soldiers and Marines, or those who have just returned from Afghanistan who are joining the ranks of the anti-war movement. That's something very new in the United States, and I think it's an indication of the deep demoralization by the soldiers because they know this war can't be won, and they're being sent to kill and be killed just so that the politicians don't have to take responsibility for a perceived defeat.
So, as you just said a little earlier, there's been quite a reaction in the US press already. Do you really think this latest report will perhaps influence government policy on withdrawing US troops from Afghanistan? Do you think it could have a major motivational effect?
It could have a major impact, or it could become a fairly minor story. I think it depends a lot on the fact that we have this synergy of stories. We have the top story that the U.S. government, the Pentagon, the American taxpayer, to the tune of $2.16 billion each year, it's funding so-called warlords and the insurgent groups in order to get supplies through. And at the same time, the interview that just came out in Rolling Stone magazine that shows that General Stanley McChrystal and the other top generals treat the White House, the elected government, the government that's supposedly in the chain of command, the commander-in-chief, in such a contemptuous way. It's an indicator of the blame game starting to happen, just as happened during the Vietnam War in its last stage, where all the different political and military figures were blaming each other for the quagmire, for the morass, for the catastrophe.
Brian Becker, thanks for joining us live on RT from Washington. Brian Becker, director of the Answer Coalition. Thank you.